really want to focus on. But the reason why I've been nervous is because I don't want to get sued. But I want to be very clear that I am not alleging anything. And what I'm doing is just presenting public resources and public sources. What caught my eye when the Epstein files were first released. So I want to make that very clear. I'm not accusing anyone of something. You can make those thoughts yourself. Okay. I don't know why I'm nervous. I don't know. I think because I've been working on this project for such a long time that I'm finally like sharing it, and I'm excited because I think that more people need to talk about this, but I'm still like, The person that is going to be the main focus of the Epstein files topic today is a woman by the name of Faith Cates. I'll first start with how her name came up for me personally, because I think it's really important to know, like, that's such, out of all of the names that popped up in the Epstein files, why was it this name? November 23rd, 2017. This is Epstein. Hope today is fun for you. Faith. Fun. When are you back in NYC? Epstein. All next week. Faith. Okay, Dylan, we'll want to see you. I always want to see you. Where are you having Thanksgiving? Epstein. Eva. And Faith says, that means Glenn check out his red hair. Epstein. Berries color for holiday. Then Faith Kate says, he's such a snooze. Who else is down there? And then Epstein says, David, Fazell, Hansen, Trump. And Faith Kate says, have fun. And this kind of went viral for a different reason. This went viral because basically it was implying that Trump had Thanksgiving dinner with Epstein while he was the president of the United States. That's why it went viral. But to me, what stuck out was who Faith Cates. The thing with Epstein is he was someone who had all these connections. And he was someone that had connections in the best of places. Next management is Jean-Luc Brunel's. Next model management is Faith Cates. There we go. She ended up retiring. Well, first I'll show you what she looks like. So this is Faith Cates. And she is literally like one of the most important people in the modeling world in and of itself. Like, she is extremely important. And so I think it's important that we kind of go into why was she so close with Epstein? What was her relationship with him? And she has had to answer quite a lot. I'm actually going to break down the fact that she and her agency has been accused of exploitation, not just with Jeffrey Epstein, but her agency has been basically accused of multiple exploitations for different models due to how they treat their models. So that's where I'm going to start, because it's layer upon layer. Like I said, going to be a very interesting stream. The Newsday, they actually had, like, my mom literally ripped this out of the newspaper. They had this file show Epstein's lifestyle on Long Island. And they talk about Jean-Luc Brunel, Leon Black, Mort Zuckerman, Michael Wolff, Dick Cavett, Tommy Motola, and Faith Cates. And this is what they say. This will be a good introduction before we get into the exploitation. Who is her? She may sound familiar. Faith Cates. Faith Cates, the next model management co-founder who grew up on Long Island, checked in with Epstein regularly including after his 2008 conviction. Emails show Cates, whose agency once represented model Kate Upton, expressing support for Epstein after media attention built in March 2011 after an interview with Guthrie. Cates advised Epstein to, quote, lay very low and quiet. In a March 4th, 2011 email, Cates said, quote, I am sorry this is happening to you, but you should know who your friends are. No, I always have your best interest at hand, even if you don't listen. Cates told Epstein she, quote, loved him like a brother and suggested he think about philanthropic projects to keep his mind occupied while in self-imposed exile. Quote, this will make people talk about you, but in a positive way. On Thanksgiving Day 2017, Cates checked on Epstein to see whom he was celebrating with. Epstein responded, quote, David Fazell Hansen Trump. Records show Trump spent that Thanksgiving during his first term at Mar-a-Lago. Quote, Epstein was a master manipulator. Cates spokesman Ken Friedman told Newsday when reached out for comment on Cates' communication with Epstein. Quote, people only knew what he wanted them to know. Miss Cates was one of the people grossly misled by him. She was friends with Epstein and had a social relationship with him, but he did not reveal his sordid nature in any of her interactions with him. She believed the narrative about his Florida conviction that the government permitted Epstein to tell, and she deeply regrets that she did. Had she known then what she had she known and everyone else know now, she would never have associated with him. So that's kind of a little bit about her. Well, then there's multiple articles and allegations of exploitation that came out. And I think it's significant to the fact that she had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, hello. Okay. This is the article that really stuck out to me personally. It's by Variety and by Tatiana Siegel. Inside the fashion world's dark underbelly of sexual and financial exploitation, modeling agencies are like pimps for rich people. This was written June 20th, 2023. Esmeralda Say Reynolds had just turned 15 years old when she was scouted by Click Model Management in New York. But the agency told the 5'11", 130-pound hopeful that she wasn't right because she looked too mature, code and fashion for a teen girl deemed too heavy because she already had developed curves. So she dropped 20 pounds and immediately signed with Next, an even bigger agency. Her ascent was swift, with the Pennsylvania native landing in pages of Vogue and shooting campaigns for top couture brands like Chanel. But the red flags emerged just as quickly. At 16, she was booked on a shoot with a photographer who had been publicly accused of sexual coercion. That same year, one of her representatives offered her some dangerous advice on how to stay catwalk thin. I remember my agent saying, cotton balls are organic, so it's fine if you just swallow them to make yourself feel full, she says. Around that time, Shay Reynolds was runway ready and made the fashion week cut for Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Saint Laurent, Fendi, and Marc Jacobs in New York, Paris, and Milan. At her first ever show, the backstage bathroom scene was troubling. On either side of me were size 0 girls puking their guts out, she recalls. There was also a financial shocker. She says she received just $130 for the 6 weeks of grueling work. I don't know if that is how much I should have made or if my agency just took that money. I have no idea because they don't give you receipts, she explains. But all that paled in comparison to a spur-of-the-moment 2-day shoot in Reykjavik in 2014, an editorial job that her next agents hyped, calling the vision ethereal and Lord of the Rings-esque. We pull up to a glacier above freezing ice-cold waters, and the photographer parks the car and he's like, climb. She and another model spent the next 30 minutes ascending a glacier in heels and gauzy slip dresses in a hailstorm, while the photographer and his assistant wore fur-lined parkas. He made us change up there. We had to get naked. His assistant grabbed my arm when I protested and was like, you're not leaving. You will take too much time, she recalls. The photographer even asked us to jump over a crevice on top of the glacier, which plunged at least 20 feet. Luckily, the stylist on the shoot was like, "That's not happening. She will die." The second day managed to be even worse. More cold storms and laying on frozen lava beds in the snow. The photographer then led the small group to the country's famed hot springs. If you step on it, it will melt your flesh. So you have to stay on this marked path for safety. But he says, get off the path and watch your footing. Shay Reynolds remembers, "You're told to do it and you do it. And he is the adult. He's in charge." Terrified, she sat in silence as they drove on to another extreme locale, pulling up beside a massive hole in the ground with, quote, "Danger, do not enter" sign. The photographer removed the sign and they marched down into a cave with stalactites covering the ceiling and stalagmites stretching across the floor. The photographer directed the two models to climb over to a desired spot. "Ice that will rip right through you if you slip," she says. "There was no help, no medic. If you don't do what they say, they will blacklist you. And that not only will F up your future career, but everything that you've done and suffered up until that point will mean nothing." When she returned to the US, she complained about the photographer to one of her agents and was dismissed with a casual, "Yeah, he's known for this." One of the resulting photos graced the cover of Fashion magazine with other images featured inside its pages. Variety has viewed the photos. They are exactly as described. Shay Reynolds was 17 at the time. She says she was never paid for the 18-hour days of work amid highly unsafe conditions. So this is who we're talking about. When asked to comment next, co-founder Joel Wilkenfield says, quote, "When we send models to photo shoots, we vet the people and we hope that model would call us if they were exposed to conditions such as this. The unfortunate part is we're not on every shoot. As for the cotton ball incident," Wilkenfield adds, "if a model would have brought that to our attention, that agent would have been fired right there on the spot." The photographer and the shoot's producer pushed back on Shay Reynolds' claims and said conditions were safe. The photographer shifted some of the blame for the situation on Next, adding, quote, "At the end of our shoot, it was made known to me that she was refusing to eat anything. We immediately called her agency Next Models to express our concern she might be dealing with an eating disorder. I was upset that her agency would have sent a model who had such concerns on any shoot, not to mention a destination project." Shay Reynolds' story is not uncommon. Variety spoke to more than a dozen models and people familiar with the inner machinations of the industry, several of whom say they were exploited financially and sexually while working. Though models fuel the $2.5 trillion fashion industry, they struggle to survive in its epicenter, New York. Unlike Hollywood talent agencies, which are licensed, regulated, and place a 10% cap on commissions, modeling firms like Next and Wilhelmina are considered management companies and enjoy a unique carve-out when it comes to the state's labor laws. Among the industry's most egregious practices, agencies typically wield, quote, "power of attorney" over their models and can legally accept payments on their behalf and deduct expenses like wildly inflated rent for substandard housing with zero obligation to detail their accounting. Even worse, the top agencies, which are said to scour refugee camps and eating disorder clinics in the quest for fresh faces, employ multi-year auto-renewing contracts, whether or not they book their models any jobs. As a result, even models who work regularly find themselves in debt to their agencies, leaving them vulnerable to predators like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, who were both deeply intertwined in this world. Weinstein is a convicted rapist, while the late Epstein served 13 months in prison for soliciting sex from a 14-year-old girl. This is one of the lawsuits against Wilhelmina. Wilhelmina is one of the biggest modeling agencies besides Next. The modeling industry really does, in some cases, rise to the level of trafficking, labor trafficking and sex trafficking, says former model Sarah Ziff, who founded the Model Alliance in 2012 to promote fair treatment for those who serve as the face of the industry. This lack of transparency, the power imbalance, the vulnerability of these mostly young immigrant women, it's a recipe for exploitation. In the early stages of doing this work, I refrained from using the language of trafficking because it felt too extreme, but that's what it is. After a decade of advocacy, Ziff is on the precipice of ushering in meaningful change in the dysfunctional industry. Remember, this was written in 2023. On June 8th, the New York Senate passed the Fashion Workers Act, which would close the legal loophole that allows management companies to escape accountability. The bill would establish a fiduciary duty for agencies to act in the best interests of their models, provide them with copies of contracts. They didn't even get copies of their own contracts. And protect their health and safety by establishing a zero-tolerance policy for abuse. The Assembly didn't vote on the bill before the legislative session ended on June 9th, but given the bill's bipartisan support and celebrity backers like Beverly Johnson and Helena Christensen, Ziff remains hopeful that it will pass when the Assembly is expected to return later this month. So far, Hollywood's three major talent agencies, WME, CAA, and UTA, have stayed on the sidelines, neither supporting nor fighting the bill despite all having modeling divisions, WME's IMG being the biggest. Ziff says she has met with IMG agents who provided helpful feedback that was included in the final version of the bill, as well as CAA reps. UTA, which represents Gisele Bundchen, didn't engage. I would love for WME, CAA, and UTA to support the bill, she says. Still, the bill continues to face major industry pushback elsewhere. And this is where we hear about Faith Cates even more. Next, co-founder Faith Cates, who once counted Epstein cohort Jean-Luc Brunel as among the agency's key investors, we will get into that in a second, started the Coalition for Fairness in Fashion and hired the powerful Albany lobbying firm Bolton St. John to fight the bill. Brunel, who died last year in a Paris prison, allegedly by suicide through hanging, same as Epstein, just saying, while facing charges that he raped minors, was the subject of a 60 Minutes investigation back in 1988 in which models claimed they were routinely drugged and raped. That's Sarah Ziff. Model Kenny Sale notes that some of the parties coming out against the bill are, quote, the people who ignored the Jeffrey Epstein's accusations, referring to a report that Epstein frequently visited the Next offices in New York and donated to Cates' charities. They took Brunel's money, and those are the same people advocating against this bill, says Wickenfield. Quote, I didn't know Jeffrey Epstein. I never had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein, and I never saw Brunel inappropriate with anybody. Cates did not respond to a request for comment for this article, but in 2019, Cates' attorney denied that his client had any business or financial relationship with Epstein and added that she had seen him once or twice a year over the previous decade. Okay. I have some emails that might not back up that claim. At the dawn of the Me Too era and the modeling industry came under scrutiny, Cates downplayed any problems at her agency. Quote, I think Next is pretty powerful and the girls don't hit on that much anymore. Don't get hit on that much anymore. Oh, they don't get hit on that much anymore, so it's okay. Okay. That's just great to know. That's fucking ridiculous. I think the ones that do are the ones that don't have great representation. We have a voice, she told Women's Wear Daily in 2017. If you think ever that somebody's bothering you on the set, you call us and somebody will be there in 15 minutes. Well, Kate. Well, Faith Cates, I hate to break it to you, but a lot can happen. Sale says the commonplace use of suffocating contracts creates an unhealthy power dynamic that leaves models open to other abuses, which he experienced firsthand. In 2015, he says he was sexually assaulted by photographer Mario Testino. The high-profile photographer has denied any wrongdoing despite being accused by at least 18 men of sexual misconduct. Sale told his agent at Click about Testino being aggressive and was met with derision. The quote, the agent said, maybe if you'd gotten on your knees, you could have gotten some better photos in your portfolio. An attorney for Click denied the claim. I'm thinking some things, but I cannot say what I'm thinking, but I'm still fucking thinking it because that's a vile fucking thing to say. Though Hollywood was made significant efforts to clean up its act following its Me Too reckoning in 2017, the modeling industry has been slow to effect change even as the two worlds overlap, with success in modeling often serving as a gateway to acting. Think Brad Pitt, Channing Tatum, and Charlize Theron, who all started as models. But there are major differences between the two industries, namely that actors are unionized via SAG-AFTRA and have on-set safety protocols. Ironically, the modeling world's feeder status to Hollywood creates a climate ripe for abuse. Many of Hollywood's powerful players brought down by sexual misconduct accusations, including Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and Brett Ratner. Brett Ratner is the director of Melania. He also was the director of Rush Hour, and he is all over the fucking Epstein files. Allegedly preyed on models hoping to make the transition. Weinstein lured models by dangling opportunities to appear on his long-running reality hit series Project Runway, or access to his fashion designer wife at the time, Georgina Chapman. Amber Gutierrez was one such model hoping to break into acting. She was 22 years old and barely spoke English when she arrived in New York from her native Italy. One day in 2015, her modeling agent emailed her to let her know that he had booked her, quote, routine casting at the Weinstein Co. She declines to say which agency. Quote, I walked through the office and basically got assaulted within 3-4 minutes that I was in there, she says. Her story eventually became the foundation of Ronan Farrow's Weinstein expose in the New Yorker. Weinstein denied ever engaging in any non-consensual sexual contact. Gutierrez notes that models like herself find themselves immediately behind the 8 ball when they start out in the business. The agency is setting them up in the modeling apartment. They pay their flights. They don't even disclose how much they cost. They pay for your visa, she explains. So you arrived and you're like $15,000 in debt, and they remove this money every time you got a job. How would you be able to survive? Speaking up about abuse is often frowned upon. Gutierrez believes she was blacklisted by Victoria's Secret. Victoria's Secret was owned by Lex Wexner, and who was behind Lex Wexner owning Victoria's Secret? Jeffrey Epstein. A brand for which she modeled after her Weinstein allegations came to light, calling the company, quote, hypocritical for claiming to be a brand that empowers women while severing its relationship with her. Victoria's Secret declined comment. Likewise, Sales says he was dropped by Click when he told his story to the New York Times in 2018. Click denied that Sale was ever dropped by the agency. In an added twist, the Click agent who made the decision to cut ties with Sale was the same agent who initially scouted Shay Reynolds. Ziff says some models who stood with the alliance of the beginning of Fashion Workers Act campaign have dropped out because their agencies told them to stop associating with the advocacy group. Another Weinstein accuser, Kaja Sokala, says this culture of favors and retaliation allows men like the notorious producer to flourish. In September 2002, she was a 16-year-old model newly arrived in New York from her native Poland when she attended an event curated by her agency, Next. It was there that she met Weinstein. 3 days later, the film mogul sexually assaulted her, she claimed. Modeling agencies are sometimes like pimps for rich people, she says. Chris Brenner, who managed supermodel Mila Djokovic's career for decades and now represents her daughter, Ever, worked as an agent at Next from 1993 to 1999 and saw the industry's problems up close. I didn't like these auto-renewing contracts, he says. A lot of these young people sign contracts without showing them to their parents because they're only 18, 19, and they think that they're doing something right, but then they're stuck. It seems like the agencies want to hold people to things in perpetuity. I didn't know what the word perpetuity meant before I worked at Next. I can't even fucking say it correctly. Brenner also became concerned about the presence of grown men. Milling about during fashion shows. Harvey became a fixture. He adds, Donald Trump certainly was. I would see Donald Trump backstage at Fashion Week home, Bryant Park, and I'm like, why is he standing there when there's a 13-year-old changing? This is weird. Next, along with a lot of agencies, would get invitations for fashion parties that they would invite certain girls to, with the hope that you're going to catch the eye of a client that would want to know more about you. Call the agency the following day. The industry still operates like that. He finally decided to leave Next and start his own management company after witnessing a model being financially exploited. I remember a young woman who had a kid at home telling me that she booked a job, left home for 2 days to shoot the job, and then next advanced her pay. But instead of taking the 20% commission, they took an extra 5% for advancing it before the client paid, he recalls. And then 2 months later, she went and did another job and was gone away from her kid for 2 days. And then a couple of months later, when she came in to get paid, she had a negative balance. And she was like, how can that be? They said, remember the job that we advanced you on? Well, that client never paid. So we had to reimburse ourselves that payment through the next job you did. Oh my God. And this is why I wanted to talk about this story, because it's so much more than just sex trafficking. And not a lot of people talk about this. Like, I'm not seeing enough people talk about the modeling industry and how Epstein used it to lure girls and women, how Donald Trump used it to lure girls and women. Brenner was disgusted. He adds, I thought you're telling me that this young mother had a mouth to feed, is taking herself away from home for days and came back with a negative balance. Where is your responsibility as an agency to guarantee that the clients that you're bringing her to work with are legitimate? As the Fashion Workers Act makes its way through Albany's legislative branches, a number of lawsuits also are moving through the courts that either directly target the agencies or those who exploited their vulnerabilities. In April, Ziff used New York's Adult Survivors Act look-back window to file a lawsuit against former Miramax/Disney executive and Weinstein pal Fabrizio Lombardo. The New York native was scouted at 14 and signed with Next as a high school student en route to becoming a face for such designers as Tommy Hilfiger, Stella McCartney. Ziff, who graduated from Columbia and received her master's degree from Harvard, accused Lombardo of raping her when she was a teen. The alleged incident in 2001 followed a private screening of the film Black Hawk Down at Miramax's offices. At the time, Wickenfield told Ziff that Lombardo was a friend of his and an influential film producer, according to the suit, which names Disney as a defendant. Wickenfield says, Fabrizio I knew, very nice guy, never heard anything bad about him in any which way. It's clear as day to me that financial exploitation in the industry leads to sexual exploitation, says Ziff. The fact that we are not treated as professionals creates a breeding ground for abuse. The foundation is rotten. So it's no wonder that when you have teenage girls who are working off debt to their agents are being sent to meet with businessmen under the guise of a professional opportunity. The power imbalance is obvious. The abuse that goes on that I experienced, that my peers experienced, was because modeling agencies have been allowed to act without any accountability. Socala also used a similar look-back window under New York's Child Victims Act to sue Weinstein and Disney in 2019. Weinstein's attorney says his client, quote, categorically and emphatically, that one always tricks me up, denies Socala's allegations, and a long simmering class action suit filed against Next and Wilhelmina in 2013 is now in the discovery phase. That suit claims that agencies took advantage of their young charges, stuffed them into apartments, and deducted expenses from their pay that included rents that far exceeded market value. Wilhelmina did not respond to requests for comment. The worst thing that happened to me has been the way I was ripped off without any oversight, and it's not a good feeling, she says. Alex Schenkel, a former J. Crew model and Wilhelmina client who is the suit's lead plaintiff, as a model or any worker, you should have the right to know the terms of any agreement that's being negotiated. We sign over power of attorney to agencies under the current system. That would be a huge thing if that's eliminated. Many of us start at a young age, and we shouldn't allow someone to have that much control over us. On May 23rd, Ziff and a group of models held a press conference in the Capitol in Albany, carrying signs that read Jean-Luc Brunel was an investor in Next Models, and New York Fashion Week generates $600 million a year in income, but we get paid in clothes. The women and men, one by one, shared their horror stories about the seemingly glamorous industry. Marie Malik, a model from South Sudan, likened the trauma she faced in the industry to what she endured as a refugee. Was disrespected, verbally abused, sexually harassed, underpaid, and never paid for some of my work and went to more dinner and events than castings as an eye candy, Malik said. The 12-year veteran of the industry who has modeled for Prada also faced racism, recounting how she arrived at a casting only to find a sign on the door that read, "No black girls unless requested." She added, "I was told, just shut up and model." Other marginalized communities are faring no better. Rosie Levine, who just self-describes as gender fluid and uses they-them pronouns, began modeling at 19 during the COVID pandemic. Levine's face was plastered on displays in Ultas and Sephora's around the world, but they say they earned only about $2,000 for the job while being represented by undefined models. Levine, who was on hand in Albany for the press conference, was also frequently misgendered. They would only put me out for bookings for like strong masculine men, which I think is hilarious because I'm a scrawny and feminine and androgynous. Rosie holds a special place as our very first model since our agency's inception in 2021, says Undefined founder Jean Tobar. At Undefined, representing our models' identities is deeply ingrained in our culture and is personally significant to me as a member of the queer community. We ensure our staff receives comprehensive training in diversity, inclusion, and gender identity. There may be instances where a model grants us permission to submit them for projects that may not directly align with their identity. This strategy allows us to introduce our models to clients who may need guidance in appreciating the beauty of genderless and gender non-conforming marketing. Literally not how that works. The final blow came right after Levine's first fashion week. A designer invited me to their apartment, and I was like, cool, like there's going to be a bunch of people I can network with. Levine recounts, but they were alone. I was 20. I cannot legally drink, and they were pouring me drink after drink after drink. I had no way to tell how much I was drinking or experience with this. I completely blacked out and woke up in their bedroom completely naked. I was like, what the hell? Levine partially blames the system for landing in a situation with no ability to consent. It's just a fact that models are disposable to agencies, designers, photographers, brands, adds Levine, who left the industry not long after. It's just a whole trafficking culture. As the global economy worsens, the level of desperation is at an all-time high, with recruitment taking place at some shocking locales. Shay Reynolds, who says she once dropped to 80 pounds amid pressure to stay skinny, notes that agencies are not above scouting for teen talent at anorexia and bulimia clinics, as reportedly happened at Stockholm Center for Eating Disorders. I would lose my fucking mind if that happened. I just realized I didn't switch over. I am so sorry. I would lose my mind, though. I would lose my mind. That's insane. Models are now being scouted from refugee camps by agencies in this new era of trying to promote diversity, says Ziff, who continues to field a steady stream of complaints via the Model Alliance support line she set up years ago. They're actually preying on girls in refugee camps and then allowing them to come live in the model apartment, rack up debt, and then return them to the refugee camp. First of all, Channing Tatum. Staying put in an agency-provided apartment is a different kind of horror movie. Jay Reynolds describes a typical New York version. There were like 8 girls living in this tiny space, and there was a scale that you had to step on to get into the kitchen. The only thing that's ever in the fridge is Diet Coke. Ziff adds that the agencies are raking in money as quasi-landlord. She says agencies typically house 8 girls in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 bunk beds and charge each model $2,000 per month, while the market rate for the entire apartment would run approximately $2,200 per month. This is ridiculous. Like, the amount of exploitation that models go through is actually asinine. Nevertheless, Ziff is feeling optimistic about the industry's future, and emboldened by previous victories, the Alliance helped pass the Child Model Act in 2013, which provides some minimum safeguards for underage models. But perhaps the biggest challenge is the very perception of models who rarely engender sympathy from the masses. No one cares about models' problems because they sound like pretty people problems, says Shay Reynolds. They think modeling is Kendall Jenner being paid $10 million for an Instagram selfie. But the reality is the rest of us are living in the Hunger Games, literally. Pun unintended. Next was all over that. article. Next, and Faith Gates was all over that. It showed that she was constantly being like her agency was constantly in and out of court. She herself was against laws, like simple labor laws. She was against things like that are red flags, like complete red fucking flags. So then I think it's important to know that Faith Gates did not just have models. How do I say this? Faith Gates didn't just set models up with different agents and bring them to parties. She introduced one model specifically to Jeffrey Epstein. I think it's really important to know that this model herself, she also was sexually assaulted by Donald Trump. I think it's also important to note that it's literally because of Faith Gates that this happened. This is from The Guardian. This is, I dated Jeffrey Epstein. The files must be released. Stacey Williams. This was written September 4th, 2025. This is not a partisan issue. The American people and Epstein's many victims deserve transparency. President Trump released all the Epstein files. In 1986, my life went from black and white to color. It was the year I taped a Duran Duran poster to my rural Pennsylvania high school locker, and then months later hung out with band members backstage at the Paris runway shows. It was the year I went from cleaning bathrooms for $3.35 an hour to making $50K in a day for a Maybelline shoot. Modeling opened a door into a gorgeous, creative, elite world, a dream born of a biological accident. It is also what led me, decades later, into a very uncomfortable position of speaking out about the horrific legacy of the child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, whom I dated briefly in 1993. I was introduced to Epstein at a dinner party, which I attended at the request of my then agent, Faith Gates. He was charming and smart and didn't condescend as we connected over current events and the state of the world, a rare experience for me in those scenarios. The brief relationship that emerged was consensual, but some of the events that took place within the confines of that relationship were not. I'm not gonna read the entire article. I think everyone should read it. It's a great piece, but I'm gonna read this paragraph because Donald Trump's mentioned. Last October, I came forward with a story I had kept private, with the exception of sharing with my closest friends for decades. Epstein once walked me into Donald Trump's office at Trump Tower, where I was groped by Trump as Epstein stood by and watched. Trump denies that this ever happened. For years, I stayed silent in order to protect my privacy and my family, but with the release of a documentary in which I was featured, I felt I had to tell the truth. To support my account, I was polygraphed by a renowned examiner. My close friends were interviewed to corroborate that I had shared this story over the years, and Trump biographer Michael Wolff confirmed that Epstein disclosed the incident to him. So I want to show you. The point is that this is one example, just one example of Faith Gates introducing a model to Jeffrey Epstein. There is also a video that I found of another survivor talking about Faith Gates that I think there's like so much that has come out about Epstein. It's actually kind of, but it just shows that like the more you dig, the more you will find out how insane this story is, how uncomfortable this story is, how he got away with so much because of the people and I think that people don't understand how intertwined the lives of politics and the lives of policy and the lives of modeling come into play.
While on a photo shoot in the year 2000, I was taken to Jeffrey Epstein's island while on a photo shoot in the Caribbean. Who I saw and what I experienced there would change me forever. For months, I had to avoid Jeffrey, but he told me that if I wanted to succeed as a Ford model, he could make it happen. And he was right. He introduced me to Katie Ford and many others in the entertainment business. His grip on the modeling business was undeniable. Not just the Ford family, but Victoria's Secret, Faith Cates, Jean-Luc Brunel, Victoria's Secret. Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion. He could make a model's career. What I didn't realize then was that once he lured someone like me in, he could also destroy my career if I did not do what he wanted me to do. In New York City, countless young women were abused by him. Everyone in the industry knew, yet he was too powerful to stop. He had friends in all over entertainment and arts, and his value to those friends made him untouchable. But I ask you, why? Who was he to our government that he was allowed to operate openly for decades? Why was he allowed to sponsor visas for young models, using their immigration status as leverage to abuse them?
I think those questions answers. I think
In the year 2000,
those answers are slowly being unfolded the more that's being released. There's also this video that came out of another model. Many of you have seen this video but don't know the details. In the video, Gabriela Rico Jimenez, 21-year-old Mexican model, is seen outside the Fiesta Inn in Monterrey, Mexico on August 3rd, 2009. Gabriela had attended a private party at the hotel, an elite modeling event that brought together prominent businessmen, politicians, and individuals whose names appeared in the Jeffrey Epstein files, all figures favored by secularists. The young woman began screaming that they were eating children. She was then arrested and disappeared without a trace. Yesterday, evidence supporting her claims was released in a new batch of files from the U.S. Department of Justice, proving that Bush did this and worse.
¡Comieron humanos! ¡Asquerosidad! ¡Comieron humanos! Yo no estaba enterada de nada. Que había, o sea, los asesinatos sí, pero que habían comido humanos. ¡Humanos! Fuera la carne humana. ¡Comieron humanos!
She is still missing. No one knows where she is. This is kind of why I wanted to go into this story, because I think it's important for all of the models that were trafficked to know that their voice matters. And I feel like it's been a disservice to them that their voices haven't been told. Their stories haven't been told. And what's even crazier is, like, this is something people should know about, because there's literally a petition against Next Modeling Agency. Like, this is how big of an issue Next Model Agency is. And I'm gonna make a video out of this. I'll put the link in the bio. But see, hold Next Model Management accountable in New York City. They have 252 signatures, and it's just Next Model Management was the most recognizable names in the modeling industry, hides behind glamour and prestige, but beneath the surface lies a dark, deeply disturbing legacy of exploitation, abuse, and corruption. This agency, long admired by the fashion world, was operated with impunity for decades, shielding its misconduct behind a veil of beauty and fame. What many don't know or choose to ignore is Next's alarming historical ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, the man who built his power on manipulation, trafficking, and control. Epstein's involvement with modeling agencies like Next is not just a footnote in his biography. It's central to how he found, recruited, and exploited vulnerable young women. The origins of Next are stained with his influence, and to this day, the agency's culture reflects the same toxic power dynamics and disregard for human dignity. This is not about a few bad apples. This is a systemic crisis. Former employees, models, and creators have come forward with harrowing stories of theft, body shaming, racism, transphobia, sexual harassment, and retaliatory firings. Behind closed doors, Next has created a hostile, discriminatory, and often predatory environment where abuse is normalized and accountability is non-existent. Real people, real trauma. Just a few examples. Models of color, including Anak Yai, have faced blatant racial discrimination, sharing horror stories, followed by another dark-skinned Sudanese curve model signing with the agency and soon after to only experience the same horrors. A transgender woman of color was subjected to similar mistreatment, exposing a pattern of transphobia and racism within the agency. Male models have spoken out about sexual harassment and body shaming, with one even quitting the agency due to the emotional toll. When Next signed their first model in a wheelchair, she was marginalized, disrespected, and excluded, highlighting the agency's performative inclusion and deep-seated ableism. Creators were, and still are, lied to about their earnings, with the agency reportedly taking 40% of income while claiming it was just 20%. Many have reported being fired or let go without explanation or pay, leaving them in legal or financial limbo while Next continued to control their likeness and work. Models have been and currently are being held against their will, almost like modern slaves. Over the past 5 years, more than 10 major employees, including the VP, heads of major boards, and key partners, have abruptly left or been ousted under troubling circumstances, many after speaking up about internal corruption. There was another Change.org profile created by another former employee, Enrico Taylor, who shared his horror stories, and yet nothing changes. Why? Because the fashion industry continues to turn a blind eye because young models, especially women of color, are treated as disposable, voiceless commodities because predators thrive where there is silence. But we will not be silent any longer. We demand an immediate investigation into Next model management. We demand accountability, transparency, and justice for every creator, model, and employee harmed by this agency's actions. We call on the fashion industry, media, and legal authorities to finally expose the rot beneath the surface and put an end to the culture of abuse that Next has perpetrated for too long. It's time to stand with the silenced. It's time to dismantle the system that has allowed this to go on. It's time to shut Next model management down for good. The petition starter, Madison T. This is how long this has been going on. It's stark. But it shows that Faith Cates was not just connected with Jeffrey Epstein with models. She was connected in more ways and allegedly exploiting models as well through her agency. Many models, as we've read in those articles, have said that the modeling world is like human trafficking, sex slavery. And yet the media is not talking about it. It's not a known thing. Like the petition just said, it's a hushed cover story. People know about it. It's a known secret. And I've always hated that. A known secret. What the fuck is a known secret? A secret should not be known. And yet this is a known secret because no one wants to fucking talk about it. No one wants to address it. No one wants to do anything. No one wants to save anyone. Because if they do anything or they step out of line, then they're going to be told off. They're going to lose their jobs. They're going to be deported if they have their visas. That is the kind of hold that these modeling execs have on these models. So now, where does Jean-Luc Brunel come into play? Because his name gets brought up a lot. Well, Jean-Luc Brunel, how I describe him is, or was, sorry, he's dead, was like Jeffrey Epstein, but mainly for Europe. He would come to the United States and he would prey on victims here, but he was mainly in Europe. He had a modeling agency as well. And his modeling agency is something I think we should talk about. Also, you're gonna see a specific name that pops up. A name that you may not have realized has anyone's connection. And I'll stop and point it out. Okay, so this is from the Daily Mail. Modeling agency boss who scouted victims for Epstein was secretly planning to testify against him, only to suddenly change his mind before meeting chilling similar fate to notorious pedophile. By Melissa Koenig, this was published February 19th, 2026. One time, top modeling agency boss Jean-Luc Brunel was prepared to turn on his longtime friend Jeffrey Epstein, but suddenly stopped cooperating after the pedophile was informed about his negotiations with officials. Brunel, who used his position to recruit foreign girls and young women for the financier, had been secretly negotiating with lawyers representing some of Epstein's victims in 2016, newly released files show. His attorney even told the victim's lawyer that his client had incriminating photos of Epstein as they discussed a date for Brunel to speak with federal prosecutors in New York in exchange for immunity, according to the documents. One of Epstein's BFs, Jean-Luc Brunel, has helped get girls. He is wanting to cooperate. A handwritten note for a federal prosecutors in February 2016 reads, Brunel is afraid of being prosecuted, the prosecutor noted. It also said he had photogenic evidence and doesn't want to implicate himself. But Brunel mysteriously never followed through with the agreement testifying against Epstein and went into hiding following the pedophile's arrest in 2019. The Frenchman then suffered an eerily similar fate to the late financier when he was found hanged in his prison cell in February 2022. This is the fucking evil prick. This was in the files too. This is the handwritten note about Brunel wanting to cooperate. It remains unclear what prompted Brunel to change his mind about testifying against the pedophile, but the decision apparently came after Epstein found out that federal prosecutors were seeking to negotiate with his friend. On May 3rd, 2016, Epstein emailed Kathleen Rumler, an attorney he corresponded with regularly, telling, his new thing is just constantly jumping on the table and the desk, and it's driving me crazy. Kathy Rumler she wasn't just an attorney. She literally worked for Obama. That's who she is. Like she's not just somebody. She worked for Obama. Like she was that high up. She actually, I think, had to resign recently from Goldman Sachs. Stop it. Telling her Brunel was planning to visit the U.S. Attorney Office the following week, and that one of Brunel's friends had asked for $3 million so that Jean-Luc would not go in. The Justice Department files show. Epstein also told the attorney who resigned from her top position at Goldman Sachs last week that Brunel was afraid he would be arrested if he failed to attend the meeting. Olaf, ja. Attend the meeting. I want to know more, Epstein wrote in the typo. Oh my God. The way he fucking wrote was awful. Typo-laden email in which he also discussed Brunel's lawyer and his friends as scammers and cast doubt on their credibility. Rumler later responded asking Epstein to call her and explain. The following day, she wrote back, awake now, talking to Poe in 20 minutes, referring to Gregory Poe, Epstein's lawyer in Washington, D.C. When asked about the emails, Jennifer Connelly, a spokeswoman for Rumler, told the Journal it was another instance of Epstein attempting to engage Miss Rumler on a matter about which she had no knowledge, and she appropriately directed him to his legal counsel. Yeah, that's exactly what was happening. Like, come on. Poe also told the Journal he did not talk with Rumler and Epstein about Brunel on May 4th, 2016, or at any other time. He said he had a scheduled call that day with Rumler to discuss his work on a legal motion to quash a subpoena directed at Epstein. My engagement with Jeffrey Epstein was limited, Poe said, adding that he stopped working for Epstein in 2016. God, they're such evil. This was the talking to Poe. Meanwhile, Brunel continued to work with Epstein against his attorney's objections. I recommended and advised him to stop communicating with Epstein, but he never did, Joseph Titone Brunel's lawyer told the Wall Street Journal. The modeling agency's boss's decision not to cooperate ultimately set us back a couple years. Oh, jeez. David Boyce, one of the attorneys who filed civil lawsuits on behalf of Epstein's victims, told the Journal. I mean, they should have been prepared that he was not going to work with them. I think that's a bad miscalculation. Like, you really thought that he was going to go through with it? Like, I would never trust Jean-Luc Brunel. Are you serious? We know from our lawsuits that there were more than 50 girls that were trafficked after this. Jesus Christ. Ugh, that makes me sick. Olaf. Documents show the prosecutor who wrote the February 2016 note later told Justice Department officials she discussed how she met with lawyers for Epstein's victims, along with colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI, but no investigation was opened. But the Department of Justice ultimately didn't make any moves against Epstein until after a Miami Herald investigation in late 2019 brought new attention to the case. When he was finally arrested in 2019, Brunel and Ghislaine Maxwell were named as Epstein's co-conspirators. And the files have shown that there are 10 other co-conspirators that the United States government is currently covering up for. Do we know who they are? I think we know who one is, and I think he is in the White House. Just saying. The newly released documents also reveal the extent of Brunel's relationship with Epstein, showing that he traveled on the financier's private jet, visited his private island, and exchanged hundreds of emails over the years. Oh my God, I have stuff in my mouth. Brunel had made a name for himself in the modeling industry despite coming under fire in 1988 after 60 Minutes aired an investigation into modeling agencies featuring women who said they were drugged by the modeling scout and were expected to have sex with his male friends to get work. No criminal charges were filed against him at the time, and by the early 2000s, he had forged a friendship with Epstein. In 2005, Epstein even wired $1 million to Brunel to help him launch MC2 Model Management, which opened offices in New York and Miami later that year. MC2, you probably have heard about it quite a bit. MC2 also was another way for Epstein to look for people to traffic. The agency's name appeared to be an inside joke and a homage to equation E equals MC2, with E standing for Epstein, as he used the agency to procure women, according to the Journal. The arrangement was detailed in one email from July 13th, 2006, in which Epstein wrote to Brunel at his MC2 address, instructing him to put a woman on your payroll with a $50,000 annual salary. He added that he would be in Paris for the following week and could see her then. This is Ghislaine Maxwell, Jean-Luc Brunel, fuckface. When Epstein was jailed in Florida in 2008, after pleading guilty to procuring a minor for prostitution, jail records show Brunel visited Epstein almost 70 times. In the aftermath, it appeared Epstein decided to start procuring women in their late teens and 20s from Europe and Russia, whom he could lure into the U.S. and abuse as they were dependent on him for visas, housing, and finances, just like one of the survivors said in that video. Epstein's wealth and power allowed him to infiltrate industries, perhaps most pervasively, the modeling industry, said Brad Edwards, a lawyer who has represented more than 200 Epstein victims. He found in Jean-Luc a like-minded predator with whom he could conspire on a daily basis to recruit and control the lives of countless young women. The two eventually became so close that a 2012 version of Epstein's trust listed Brunel as a beneficiary for as much as $5 million. At around the same time, MC2's former financial controller and bookkeeper Maritza Vasquez was set to give a deposition about Epstein. She had given a sworn statement 2 years earlier. I have to sneeze. Do I? Okay, excuse me. Filed by Epstein's victims, in which she described how models were placed in apartments under his control and how visas were arranged for underage girls. Ahead of her deposition, Brunel emailed Epstein asking for advice. Her lawyer said she will take the fifth on everything. What to do? He asked, according to the documents. Ask every question you can think of. Did she have sex with the girls? Make her sit and take the fifth to every question for hours, Epstein replied. The documents also showed that Brunel and Epstein relied on a common recruiter, Daniel Syed. We still don't know much about him. Daniel Syed, his name has come up quite a few times, but we still don't know much about him. I think personally it's an name. Because like people dug in and people do not know who this guy is. To find girls and women in other countries. Syed, a European modeling scout, exchanged dozens of, I mean, maybe he is real. I mean, I don't think I've seen a picture of him. I think that's the problem. Is I don't think I mean, they claim he's a European modeling scout, but like I haven't seen anything about him. Who knows? In one exchange in July 2014, Syed told Epstein he had 2 girls from Sweden, a Slovakian, 2 French, and redacted. The Russian, the one with whom you spoke. Epstein then said he would reimburse Syed for his expenses and asked for the girls' names. Syed later compared his recruiting efforts to fishing, saying, quote, in this business, I feel like fisherman. Sometime I cash. I don't know what sick means. Quick, sometime no fish. He then ended the email with a tally of his expenses, $2,700 euros. Imagine that you find out like you're not even worth any, like you're worth less than that. That like fuck. Oh my God. In a video posted to X and broadcast on French television, Syed said he only worked professionally with Epstein to introduce him to models. He said Epstein took advantage of my trust. Everyone took advantage of my trust. He's a gentleman. He knows how to talk. He's a diplomat, Syed claimed. I wasn't in a position to know that this man was dangerous. What time we have learned that he committed atrocities. Sure. This is probably one of the most infamous pictures. This is Virginia Giuffre with ex-Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who is in a lot of fucking trouble. That's all I'm saying. On December 2014, Virginia Giuffre filed a motion to join a lawsuit challenging Epstein's non-prosecution agreement related to his arrest in Florida. She alleged Brunel would bring girls as young as 12 to the United States and pass them on to friends, including Epstein. The allegations apparently caused Brunel and Epstein's friendship to fray, and in January 2015, Brunel and MC2 sued Epstein in a Florida court, claiming the agency had gone from being worth millions to almost worthless because of the notoriety surrounding Epstein's crimes. The lawsuit alleged Brunel lost potentially $10 million in profits, that photographers and scouts cut ties with MC2, and that Brunel could no longer recruit new models because families refused to entrust their daughters to a man publicly linked with Epstein. How is that Epstein's fault? That's your fucking fault. One month after the suit was filed, Titone, Brunel's lawyer, called Edwards, the victim's attorney, saying he was having trouble serving Epstein with the suit and raised the possibility that Brunel possessed photographic evidence against Epstein. But the feud between Brunel and Epstein seemed to come to a temporary end by April 2015, when Brunel suggested a friend mediate the dispute, and later that week, Epstein asked to meet Brunel. I have some ideas that I think you will like, he told the model agency boss on April 14th. Brunel ultimately wound up settling the suit, the terms of which are confidential, as Epstein continued luring young women. Just say children. Like, they're children. They're under the age of 18. They're children. Like, if this was boys, you would not say young men. You would say boys. So why are we saying luring young women? They're children. Period. And in this environment, words fucking matter. When Epstein was later found dead in his own jail cell in 2019, Brunel went into hiding as French authorities launched an investigation searching his home and offices. He was finally arrested in December 2020 as he attempted to board a plane to Senegal. Despite his untimely death, prosecutors in Paris said Saturday they would re-examine the case against Brunel and set up a special team to analyze evidence that could implicate French nationals. I'm curious where his fucking files are. Why don't they combine his fucking files with the Epstein files? Like, what are we doing? I haven't heard anything about his shit. Paris prosecutor Laure Cow also announced on Wednesday 2 other investigations related to Epstein's dealings, according to Le Monde. One would be focused on human trafficking, while the other is focused on financial offenses of money laundering, breaches of probity, or tax fraud. The probes will be conducted in collaboration with the National Directorate. And so you're probably like, okay, why did we read all that? Like, what was the point of that? And the point of that is to know who Jean-Luc Bourdonnel was, because of his relationship with Faith. I don't think people know how much Faith Kate's relationship is with Jean-Luc Bourdonnel. I mean, it's been touched on like a little bit, but it's not been touched on enough, in my opinion. And I think what's significant is that there is another player that is now going to be added to connection to Faith Kate's, and that is Steve Mnuchin. Now, that name may sound familiar. Steve Mnuchin, let me get a picture, because I'm someone who needs pictures. Steve Mnuchin used to be the Secretary of Treasury for Donald Trump during his first administration. And Faith Kate's and him are buds. Just saying. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin acted as point of contact for firm run by model scout Jean-Luc Bourdonnel, who is blamed for supplying girls sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. Mnuchin said to, this is by Ross Betson. This was published September 16th, 2019. Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin acted as a point of contact for firm owned by one of the Jeffrey Epstein's most infamous associates and alleged procurer, Jean-Luc Bourdonnel, report claims. Mnuchin is named in documents for Next Management Corporation, formed in 1988. So remember, Next Management is Jean-Luc Bourdonnel's first management company. Next Modeling. Why is Next, it's fucking confusing. But this Next Management is Jean-Luc Bourdonnel. Formed in 1988 by model industry bosses Jean-Luc and his brother Arnaud Bourdonnel, the Daily Beast reported. But at the time, Bourdonnel was the subject of a 60 Minutes documentary accusing him of drugging and raping models. Nearly 30 years later, the latest accusation against Bourdonnel is that he flew 12-year-old French triplets to Epstein so he could abuse them. A Treasury Department official said Mnuchin wasn't aware he was listed as the company official who files registration papers and receives lawsuits and official documents. How do you not know? How are you not aware of that? I'm sorry. You're not aware that you are responsible for an entire modeling agency? What? Secretary Mnuchin never served in any official capacity in Next Management Corporation, never did any business with, nor knows either of the Bourdonnel brothers, and never had any ownership stake in Next Management Corporation or any related entities. Spokesman Monica Crowley said Secretary Mnuchin had no knowledge whatsoever that he was listed as a point of contact and an address he's not familiar with, for a company that he's had no dealings with. That listing was clearly in error. And I'm the Queen of Sheba. However, Mnuchin's office did tell the Daily Beast he was a close friend of Faith Kate's, the president and co-founder of Next Modeling Agency. The Bourdonnel brothers invested in Kate's modeling agency, founded in 1989, through their separate entity called Next Management Corporation. But Kate's claimed she had no involvement with that company. Ms. Kate's was never involved with Next Management Corp in any way, a spokesperson told the Daily Beast, given that she never designated anyone, including Secretary Mnuchin, to be a DOS process or any officer or director of Next Management Corp. They claim Kate's had broken off contact with the Bourdonnels over a dispute decades ago, in which Kate's agency had sued Next Management Corporation for raiding her agency. However, it has been previously been reported that Kate's was in contact with their mutual friend Epstein in recent years. He is understood to have regularly swung by Kate's New York office and made substantial donations. Epstein's ties to the fashion world have come under increasing scrutiny and Brunel, whose whereabouts are unknown. Oh, this was before he was arrested. Is said to have provided access to underage girls on his modeling books. Virginia Roberts Dufresne, who claims she was recruited to be Epstein's sex slave, made the claims in a recent unsealed civil suit by the Miami U.S. Attorney's Office in 2015. Roberts claimed young French girls believed to be sisters were a gift from Brunel to Epstein. That's what they were saying earlier, the triplets. Jeffrey bragged after he met them that they were 12 years old and flown over from France because they were really poor over there. Their parents needed the money or whatever the case is, and they were absolutely free to stay and flew out, Grace said. These people are so evil. But yeah, no, it just continues to talk about alleged victims. It continues to talk about what happened, but the part that I wanted to talk about just came up with Faith Cates. It's important that she had a relationship not only with Jean-Luc Brunel, but she also had a relationship with Steve Mnuchin, Donald Trump's fucking Secretary of Treasury. Like, that's insane. So then, this is more connections with Steve Mnuchin and Epstein, which I'm sorry, how was this not like really dug in? Like, how did we not dig into this a little bit more? I don't understand. Steve Mnuchin's mysterious link to creepy Epstein model scout by Emily Sugarman, written September 15th, 2019. I hope that this shows, like, is shedding a light on how intertwined these the lives of Jeffrey Epstein was with so many powerful people, and how he literally like destroyed so many people's lives as well. In the late 1980s, before he was a member of Donald Trump's cabinet or even a high-rolling hedge fund manager, Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin served in an official capacity for a business run by one of Jeffrey Epstein's most infamous associates. In official records, Mnuchin is listed as the official state point of contact for Next Management Corporation, a company formed in 1988 by modeling industry insiders Jean-Luc Brunel and Arnaud Brunel. At the time, Jean-Luc Brunel had just been the subject of a 60 Minutes documentary accusing him of drugging and raping at least 3 models. Later, he would be accused by 2 women of supplying girls to Epstein to be sexually abused. Brunel has denied the allegations. Records accessed by the Daily Beast list Mnuchin as the New York Department of State process for Next Management Corporation. According to department officials, the DOS process is the person who files a company's registration papers and receives lawsuits and other official documents on their behalf, usually a lawyer or some other legal representative. He's a hedge fund person, a lawyer. I truly don't know much about what hedge fund even is. A Treasury Department official said Mnuchin did not know he was listed as the DOS process for Next Management Corp before the Daily Beast inquiry. He said it was not clear how Mnuchin wound up serving in that role. Dude, like, they don't just give it out like willy-nilly. Like, there's obviously signatures of yours that corroborates with this. Like, what are we doing? He said it was not clear how Mnuchin wound up serving in that role, and added that the secretary did not recall ever meeting either Brunel, brother, and had never done business with either of them. Mnuchin's office did confirm that he was a longtime friend with Faith Cates, the owner of the Next modeling agency. The Brunel brothers co-founded the Next agency with Cates. See, this is what's kind of confusing. There's others that are saying like, oh, that they invested in Faith Cates' company. This one is saying co-founded. I don't know. No one has ever been able to kind of flesh that out. But it is interesting that there's multiple different stories on how Faith Cates got her agency. Either way, the Brunel brothers are involved, no matter what. In 1989, and their company, Next Management Corp, owned a 25% stake in the agency for several years. So Faith Cates owned 25% stake in Next Model Management. I'm sorry, the fact Next Model Management, I'm sorry, it sounds fucking stupid, like deep creative. The address listed under Mnuchin's name in the State Department records is the first address for Cates' company, Next management company. Reached by the Daily Beast, Cates denied any involvement with setting up Next Management Corporation and said she had nothing to do with Mnuchin serving as DOS process. Ms. Cates was never involved with Next Management Corp in any way, a spokesperson said, given that she never designated anyone, including Secretary Mnuchin, to be a DOS process or any officer or director of Next Management Corp. The spokesperson added that Cates' agency sued Next Management Corp 25 years ago over allegations that the Brunel brothers had, quote, raided the agency. I don't know what that even means. When I think of raided, I think of like the police, so I don't know what that means. And said Cates had not had any contact with them since then. She said Cates had no knowledge of why her company's address. No knowledge. Oh my God. It just so happens that the Brunel brothers who worked with you, they just happened to put down this address. Oh, like, come on. They really think we're that fucking stupid. Was listed in official records for Next Management Corp. Cates has her own connections to Epstein. As the Daily Beast previously reported, former employees say the financier regularly dropped in on the agency's New York offices, and tax filings show he donated tens of thousands of dollars to charities connected to Cates and her family. At least 2 former Next models have been romantically linked to Epstein, and a third appears in his infamous address book. The spokesperson for Cates said neither she nor the Next agency had any business or financial ties to Epstein, and that Cates never introduced the financier to any models. Mnuchin has been friends with Cates for approximately 30 years, according to the Treasury Department official, and once helped Cates set up a business, quote, as a friend. A spokesperson for Cates confirmed the two had been friendly for decades. She said Mnuchin had offered Cates business advice when she started Next Management Company and served as her real estate broker. What? A hedge fund does that? What? Mnuchin's spokesperson said the secretary had no ownership in any of Cates' businesses or served them in any business capacity. The Daily Beast was unable to reach Jean-Luc or Arnaud Brunel for comment. The ties between Jean-Luc Brunel and Epstein, however, have been widely reported. Flight records show Brunel flew on the financier's private plane more than 20 times between 1999 and 2005, and House staff said in depositions that the modeling agent was regularly present at Epstein's Palm Beach estate. When Epstein was arrested in 2008, Brunel visited him nearly 70 times. I know that a lot of this is repetitive, but it's still important to lay out the foundation of this incredibly intertwined story. One of Epstein's first public accusers, Virginia Roberts, now Giuffre, claimed Epstein forced her to sleep with Brunel and many other powerful men in the years he kept her as his, quote, sex slave. She also accused Brunel of using his modeling industry connections to supply Epstein and other wealthy men with foreign girls to abuse. A former bookkeeper for one of Brunel's agencies told the FBI in 2010 that Brunel used the company to bring in teenage models from around the world and house them in Epstein's Upper East Side apartments. The bookkeeper claimed that the girls were loaned out to wealthy clients for as much as $100,000 a night and were not paid if they refused to be molested. French authorities are currently seeking Brunel as part of their probe into Epstein and recently interviewed 2 women who say they were victims of the modeling agent in the late 1970s and early 80s, according to the French newspaper Le Parisien. Brunel has denied all claims of sexual misconduct as well as any knowledge of Epstein's wrongdoings. In legal filings, he said the former bookkeeper had been fired from his agency for embezzling company funds. I strongly deny having participated neither directed nor indirectly in the actions Mr. Jeffrey Epstein is being accused of, Brunel said in a 2015 statement. Okay, buddy. I strongly deny having committed any illicit act or any wrongdoing in the course of my work as a scouter or model agency's manager. The more that gets unveiled, the crazier this story gets, and the more frustrated I get that not enough people know about Faith Cates and not enough people have looked into her. And the more confused I get. And I just don't understand, am I missing something? I'm not quite sure what is going on. But I think it's important to note that she is just one person. There's so many other people like her, but I think it's also important to acknowledge she's also a woman. And women had to be involved with Jeffrey Epstein in some format. I mean, you could not do an entire human trafficking, sex trafficking, or operation without women. We know Ghislaine Maxwell was number one. And I just think, like, what was going on and what was happening? And why is Faith Cates all over these files? I think it's just very interesting and something we need to look into. There's two more things I want to show. I'm at the DOJ's Epstein library, and I'm going to type in Faith Cates. I want you to see how many times her name pops up. There's 5,245, and you may think, oh, that's not a lot. It's not, but there was some things that stuck out to me that I think not enough people know about. I went through I went through a majority of them. This is a text exchange between Faith Cates and I think Epstein's, I'm blanking on her name, but she's the person the secretary, but she does like more than that, but the secretary. This is the number if you want to look into it, but okay, let's go through this. This was November 17th, 2015, 3:39 p.m. to Faith Cates from blank. The little trip J.E. is to take is now for the 5th. How early could she get to the city? Faith Cates. Anytime. Faith Cates. Okay, super. Let me tell J.E. No, not from the secretary. Let me tell J.E. and get back with you. I'm not sure what time he needs to leave the city. Faith Cates. Okay, let me know ASAP. She is holding her time. Blank to Faith Cates. Faith. Jeffrey says yes to having Sinead come see him at 8 or 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, December 5th at his home. Can she make that work? I would offer a bit later, but Jeffrey plans to take a trip this day out of the city. This trip is still in the planning stages, but we would like to confirm this with Sinead now. Can you find out if she is okay, if it's okay for her? I think this is a victim, by the way. Sure, you might have to arrange a car for her as it's quite early and the trains don't run early. No biggie, she is life-changing for sure. The other woman, okay, we could work on that. And then responded, I just reached out checking now. The 8:30 shouldn't be a problem. Faith Cates responds, super. So that was one. This is another part of the text exchange. Jeez Louise. Is he here Sunday for PT? Faith Cates wrote. The other person, he leaves Friday night. She have time Friday, maybe. Friday day, maybe. Not so much trying, Faith Cates. Then the person wrote, okay, thanks. He will be back December 2, 3, and 5. He is taking a short trip on 4th and not in the New York. Could we have her see him one of those dates? Although this current trip sure is preferred. Okay, we found a date. She is leaving the 5th, open for him. Let's make the appointment so we make it happen. So I looked into if there is a Sinead at Next Model Management, and there is. I'm not going to show her, but there is. And I don't know what those text messages infer, but they don't look great. That's all I'm going to say. They do not look great. They look like something bad was being set up. Plain and simple. And that was the only text exchange that I saw that had any kind of direct inference of Faith Cates bringing a model to Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't go through all of the files. There could be more. But that one stuck out to me. I think that more people need to understand and look more into the women that are associated with Jeffrey Epstein, because like I said, you cannot build an empire with human trafficking without women like Jeffrey Epstein did. It's not possible. Like at all. Like it's not possible. The reason why so many girls were entangled and trapped was because they trusted Ghislaine Maxwell. And then Jeffrey Epstein paid girls to get their friends to come into the circle. And those girls then got paid. And he specifically chose the specific girls. He knew that they came from poor families, they came from broken homes. He chose them specifically for these reasons. So without girls and women, this operation would never have succeeded the way it did. And yet not enough people are talking about it. And not enough people are like focused on the modeling. Like there is another whole side to the modeling. I mean, Lex Wexner literally gave Jeffrey Epstein the Victoria's Secret fortune. And Lex, there's no explanation why. It's just like, yeah. There's so much more questions I have, but that is what I wanted to present about what happened with Jeffrey Epstein and Faith Cates. I do have this little video also that I found of when she resigned, because she was the head of Next Management up until that was released. And that came out in December.
Now let's talk about the co-founder of a major modelling agency quietly exiting the company after her very friendly emails with Jeffrey Epstein resurfaced. Faith Cates' emails with the convicted pedophile are from 2017. Now, that's 2 years before Epstein was arrested on federal sex trafficking charges, but it's several years after his first conviction for being a pedophile, for having sex with a 14-year-old. That dates back to around 2008. Michael, in these emails, she gushes about how she always wants to see him.
Yeah, it's really bad. And Faith Kate or Kate Faith, whatever. She's got one of those names that it's kind of creepy, which either way you say it, it doesn't sound right. But yeah, who's emailing a guy after he just got out of jail for a horrible charge? And she's like, "Hey, what's going on at the island?" That's like going back to a restaurant where you got food poisoning and like begging to go back. They should find everybody who was emailing this guy after he got out of jail and just say, you might want to resign now. You might want to just hit the road now.
Well, he did have dinner parties with some very high-profile individuals who had no issue breaking bread with a man who was a convicted pedophile. It really is astonishing what $1 billion can do for you. People can forget all sorts of sins. Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau, I think we're amongst the first to say these.
So this is in Australia. But besides in the newspapers, it's not really a story. And so I just wanted to kind of bring this to light. So yeah, that is kind of my in-depth kind of what I have found on Faith Cates. Yet again, I don't know what's going on. I'm just presenting what is public record, and let everyone else do what they want to do.